to Driving Success, the award winning Fleet Advantage podcast, a show where we bring you expert insights in the latest trends in fleet management and transportation. I'm your host, Tracy Derival, and today we're bringing you episode 2 of our third annual Summer of Safety series. Today's episode is all about CVSA's Operation Safe Driver Week, which returns July 12th through the 18th of 2026, which brings increased education and enforcement across the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. While the campaign lasts only 1 week, the importance of safe driving extends far beyond July. I'm excited to welcome back a familiar guest, Nathan Rhoads, who is the Director of Asset Performance here at Fleet Advantage. Nathan is currently on the road this week as a part of his work with transportation fleets across the country. So today's episode will only be audio only. We're excited to have him join us from the road to share his firsthand perspective. So let's get into the episode. Hi, Nathan. Thank you for joining us again as part of this year's Summer of Safety series. Now, for our new listeners and viewers, can you start by reintroducing yourself and sharing a little bit about your role and also your experience within the transportation industry?
Of course. Thank you so much for having me, Tracy. I really appreciate it. So my name is Nathan Rhoads. I'm a director of asset performance here at Fleet Advantage. I've been here for a little over 4 years. For the first portion of my time, I was in procurement and then transitioned to my current role where I essentially just work with customers, kind of that middle mile, work with them on maintenance best practices, operations, essentially anything they need to help support their fleet and run the lowest total cost of ownership equipment that they can.
Awesome. Now, to kick things off, Nathan, what is CVSA's Operation Safe Driver Week and why has it become such an important initiative for improving roadway safety across North America?
Of course, so Operation Safe Driver Week is essentially what it sounds like. So it's a week-long initiative that
Mhm.
focuses on reinforcing safe driver habits nationwide to ensure that we all get where we're going safely. So this year's initiative is going to start off Sunday, July 12th and run through Saturday, July 18th. And essentially, law enforcement is going to be out on the lookout for both commercial vehicles as well as passenger vehicles engaging in any unsafe or risky behavior.
Nice. Now, this year's campaign once again focuses heavily on driver behavior. Looking at the latest data from our recent Trust Safety Index, what are some of the biggest behavioral trends that you're seeing, and why do they continue to challenge organizations with transportation fleets?
So, according to the most recent Trust Safety Index, which you just referenced, and for those who are not familiar, the Trust stands for Truck Reliability Usage Safety Tracker. So, according to the Trust Index, dangerous driving accounts for 75% of unsafe driving violations. So, dangerous driving could be anything from improper lane changes, using handheld devices, following too closely, among others. So, distracted driving has claimed the lives of over 3,200 people in 2024. Seatbelts are another simple thing we can all do to ensure that we stay safe out there. So, nearly 50% of all fatal accident victims are not wearing their seatbelt based off of
Mhm.
2024 data. And speeding actually makes up the last 25% of the trust study. In fact, that 29% of all traffic fatalities in 2024, speeding was a contributing factor. And by the way, that accounts to 11,288 deaths in 2024. 29% of that speeding is a contributing factor. So slow down.
Right. Now, many organizations, they do invest heavily in equipment, technology, and maintenance. But when it comes to this specific initiative, how important is the human element, right? And what role does ongoing driver coaching plays in creating long-term improvements?
So it's actually a great point, Tracy. The technology obviously has evolved at a rapid pace over the past few years. Obviously, the hope of these advancements is to mitigate as much risk as possible, right? So on these trucks, we have adaptive cruise control, we have lane keep assist, we have collision mitigation. We have to still rely on experienced drivers to be alert and aware, and of course, follow all the traffic laws. All this technology and data is it's incredibly powerful tools, but we still need to lean on best in class safety programs combined with actionable data coupled with professionals who know and understand how to interpret that data in order to improve overall safety.
Right. Now, many organizations they do have access to telematics, driver scorecards, and roadside inspection data, but not everyone is using it to its full potential. So, how can they turn those insights into proactive coaching instead of simply reacting after a violation occurs?
So it's a great question. And it's actually one that fleets have been struggling with for several years. So electronic ELDs went into effect at the end of 2017, and at which point we started gleaning more than just hours of service data. Right. So with many of those early applications, in the very first days, we were able to view driver habits, right? Hard braking, hard corners, speeding. And then shortly after the EODs went into effect, in-cab cameras started to showing up on a much wider scale, right? So now we can actually view driver habits in real time. So essentially, we've been inundated with data for almost a decade at this point. And the difficult part is, what do we do with this data and who manages it all? So I believe the best practice is to ensure that your safety team is constantly and consistently reviewing this data, maybe putting in place safe driver bonus, right? Reward those drivers who are constantly not distracted. They're consistently driving within the speed limit. And then you reward those drivers who are practicing all those safe habits and educate the drivers who may slip up from time to time. So I believe it's always best to be proactive in every aspect of transportation rather than reactive.
Now, with this being our third year covering this initiative, what are some pieces of advice that you would leave organizations with transportation fleets and their drivers just to help keep safety top of mind long after the campaign ends?
Tracy, I really appreciate you asking me to be a part of this conversation for the third year in a row. So I actually started my career almost 25 years ago running and maintaining fleets of mainly cars and light trucks, right? The smaller stuff. And it wasn't until I moved into this heavy duty space that I realized just how important this topic is, not just to keep our drivers safe, but everyone else on the road. My family is traveling those same roads as yours and everyone else listening to this. In fact, both my sons are actually on the path to become active law enforcement in the coming years. And if they continue down that road, it's very possible they may be on the side of a busy highway ensuring we're all safer because of this initiative that we're talking about today. So
Mhm.
please, to put down the phone, slow down, follow all the posted speed limits, be alert. And if you do happen to see an officer conducting one of these stops, move over, give them some extra room. It's actually a law in 19 states, but it's always a good practice, even if it's not a law in your state. And of course, you can always review the Trust Safety Index that we talked about earlier to see where your fleet ranks against peers in your industry. Regardless of how much opportunity there is within your organization, it's always good to implement those actionable items to address any unsafe driving concerns, again, before it's too late.
And on that note, Nathan, we want to thank you again for joining us today and offering your insight. We really appreciate your continued support in promoting fleet safety and education.
Of course, Tracy, thank you again. I truly appreciate the opportunity.
That wraps up episode 2 of our Summer of Safety series. We hope this conversation helps both drivers and organizations with transportation fleets take meaningful steps towards safer operations during Operation Safe Driver Week and throughout the year. Join us next time for the third and final episode of the series, where we'll focus on CVSA's Break Safety Week. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share, like, and leave a review. You can listen to us on Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Apple Podcasts. You can watch this full episode on our social media platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and X. Until next time, let's continue to drive solutions together.